We've, of course, seen a Bloomberg Businessweek piece which has looked about the concerns of supply chain strength. Is this something that you think is fully secure when you look at Microsoft and can be going forward when we have such strength of attacks, as you say, that you keep picking up on?
Yeah, I mean, look, when it comes to operational security, including, I'll call it silicon supply chain or software supply chain, it's all about every day being in the gym and practicing. And in our case, in this particular incident, we're very confident that we have no exposure, but we've got a lot of people dedicated to it, a lot of technology dedicated to it, a lot of rigor and process dedicated to ensuring our supply chains, as I said, both silicon and software, to be secure.
Wrapped up with the cybersecurity conversation is that of privacy. Do you think the legislative agenda is where it should be, regulation is where it needs to be when it comes to privacy of individuals' data and when it comes to the security of company data?
I mean, it's a great set of questions, but we're already living in a world where, for example, I think the secular movement around individual data is that you should think of privacy as a human right. And GDPR out of Europe, in some sense, legislates that. And so we've done a lot of work implementing that in our products, and we have taken some of the rights from GDPR and made it available globally. And so I think that this is something that the United States will look at. I know California has looked at it. We hope that there's more of a national privacy law, because I think we don't want increased transaction costs that in fact are going to harm more of the small businesses, not large companies like Microsoft. But if you really want a level playing field, I think having a legislative framework that reduces transactional costs and even causes new entrepreneurs to be able to adopt it as a very important thing. The other one I would say is Cloud Act. I think the United States, I'm very pleased to see us, because after all we had to go to the Supreme Court and fight our own government on this case multiple times, but we did, in a bipartisan way, work with the legislative bodies to get a Cloud Act passed. And it's fantastic, because I think that really creates a new equilibrium of how nations can balance their need for privacy on one end and national security on the other end. And this is something that I'm hoping that will now be bilateral deals between the United Kingdom and the United States and other governments, which I think is very needed.
Satya, you helm a fascinating company because it is more than 40 years old, as you were on stage talking about. It's been through its education process. It's looked at regulators over the years. It's evolved. It's made sure that it's now still one of the most valuable companies in the world, cutting on $1 trillion. How do you look at some of the other big technology giants that are grown in the US and see them having to evolve and catch up in some ways to some of the charges and arguments and indeed resolutions that you've had to find in your past? What experiences can you give to them? Do you think they're all dealing with it in the right way as they evolve?
I can only speak for our own experience and what we are trying to do. And I think we as an all-up tech industry, I don't say this as sort of some kind of a terms of competition between us. I think all up, when I look back in our own history between, say, 1975 to now, technology and its importance in our societies and in our economies has gone through a sea change. The tech industry itself is just 5% of our GDP, and yet I think its influence on the rest of the 95% is far greater than it ever has been in our history. And so therefore I think all of us, including Microsoft, and starting with us, is to be comfortable knowing that we will be held to a different standard. And that's what I think about as Microsoft, and how everything from what's our operational security posture to what is our ethics, how are we going to, in some sense, even go and ask for regulation, where I think it'll create more of a rule of law and a framework for us to make progress, especially in liberal democracies. So I think that these are all the places where there needs to be a level of maturity way beyond, I think, day-to-day competition.